On this episode of The Exchange, I speak to Charlotte Williams about why it's so important that we see diversity in the media, and Michael Okocha talks about some of the unconscious assumptions he has come across as a surgeon working in the NHS. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Exchange after what I hear is quite a long shift.
Yeah, well, just past 24 hours with lots of fun midnight operating. So,
Well, thank you for joining us. You're a surgeon working at a hospital in Bristol, and recently you're appointed as Equality and Diversity Officer for ASSET. Why was this role created?
There is sufficient evidence to say that up to 50% of female trainees, if not more, experience some form of discrimination at least once a month at work.
Wow.
And that 30% of trainees had witnessed homophobic comments. And again, 30% of trainees had seen racial statements or discriminatory behaviors within the last month. So they created this role to be the voice of trainee surgeons, regardless of their gender, age, ethnicity, regardless of their background. And we just want to really be a supportive voice in a year of a lot of trouble.
What are some of the unconscious assumptions that are made frequently in your line of work?
I had this really, really great boss, and he was the kind of person that every time you were in theatre with him, he did something amazing. And they're rare, we do kind of bog standard stuff. After a while, things get repetitive, but every time you always learn something new. And I basically fought my way to get into a theatre list with him. And we'd worked in clinics and I spoke to him a lot. I finally got into theatre with him, and, theatre team were like, "Oh, have you got some music?" And I was like, yeah, I'll get the music on. And, it's just a nice environment. And he literally turned around and he was like, "I don't want to hear any of that crap you people play." And it's just an assumption that kind of eroded the nice working environment. Everyone was a bit more on edge. I'll give you other scenarios where you spend time with a patient explaining how you're going to do the operation and what you're going to do, and then they're like, "Oh, thank you very much. Can you tell me when the surgeon's going to be there?"
And is this to do with, in general, is there a real lack of diversity within surgical training?
I think we more or less represent the population on the whole, if not have maybe more diversity even. I think there's a lack of diversity in senior roles.
Okay.
This filters down. So if you don't see people of color or women or people with different sexual preferences in positions of power, and junior trainees don't have anyone to aspire to, then the visuals aren't there. People don't understand that you can be in that role.
Mm.
And I think that's something that's really powerful and something that we're currently working on.
Charlotte, it's great to have you on this episode of The Exchange.
It's lovely to be invited. Thank you.
In 2019, you founded SevenSix, a social media and influencer marketing agency. Can you tell me what motivated you to start up this agency in the first place?
So I've worked in the influencer space, both as an influencer and as an influencer marketer, for pretty much a decade now. I was being invited to be on a lot more campaigns than I was before. And I looked around a lot of rooms and on campaigns, and I realised for a lot of it, I was one of very few people of colour, if not the only Black person, in said rooms or on said campaigns. And it would really confuse me because I didn't have a large following in 2018. So as a marketeer, I was thinking, my following's fine, my engagement's fine, but I could literally name you top of my head like 10 amazing influencers that would be amazing for this event or project. And I'd always ask the PRs at the end, what happened? Why was I the only person of colour? Where's everyone else? And they'd always say the same thing, that they didn't have access to those types of influencers, which is kind of making me feel like I'm of a different like species to the influencers that were around. I then decided to launch the agency, which focused specifically on representation, so ensuring that brands are as inclusive as possible when it comes to their social media and their brand activations.
What difference do you think it makes to have more diverse voices included from the start?
So a lot of the campaigns that they put in, diversity is a really important pillar. So they make sure that they have a Black actor or model, or at least one person wearing hijab, or a representation for the LGBTQ community, and it's all like that tick box is there. But then I always say diversity without inclusion means nothing. So they're doing this stuff and they're putting the Black model in, and the hijabi wearing model in, let's say, but then behind the scenes on that set they haven't got a hairstylist that can actually do the Black model's hair, or they haven't thought about kind of religious or cultural experiences that they might need to change on set to make the hijabi wearing model feel comfortable. And just like small things which seem small but actually are really damaging, not only to the kind of excitement of the day, because having a model who has to do her own hair whereas everyone else can get their hair done with a hairstylist, and this happens all the time, happens to me all the time as well, makes you feel a bit crap, and then you feel like you're just the extra on the set, the afterthought.
And what are some of the unconscious assumptions that you frequently come across in your work in marketing?
There's this idea that Black influencers, as an example, don't sell, which I think over the last few months we've proved that that's not true, with the influx of brands having to now work with Black content creators and influencers because they've been called out after the posting of Black Square during the Black Lives Matter resurgence. So they've been able to see that, they do actually sometimes do the same, sometimes do better. It's not the skin colour, it's actually the individual talents of the person. So I think that's made a bit of a difference. But that's one of the biases that we see, that people are just so, it's just been programmed into them, they're just not going to perform the same. So that's quite sad.
And these experiences that you've personally just outlined there, how have these both affected you and motivated you?
There's a mental load. Not only are you worried about learning a new operation or meeting a new team, you're also worried about the racial assumptions or gender assumptions they may make about you. And that's something that I always will carry. How has it motivated me? Over the next year, we're going to be changing the face of surgery. So we're launching a video campaign called 50 Faces of Surgery. And this is going to be, really hammering home that representation matters. And that's really important, because if I can convince a med student that they are more than welcome and that they can flourish, then I've done my work.
When people speak or act out of unconscious bias, do you always feel the need to challenge it?
You should challenge it. And sometimes in a hospital working environment, it's difficult to challenge it. So, we're about to start a case when someone called a patient exotic. I'm going to rely on this person to do this operation swiftly. If I challenge it there and then, it may affect our working relationship, which means I can't get the case done the way I'd like it to be done. So I ended up speaking to the person afterwards.
Yeah.
But I didn't challenge it there and then.
When unconscious bias is brought to light, how should we respond to that?
It can feel like a criticism, and everyone responds to criticism in a different way. Just listen. That's all you can do. If you've made someone feel a certain way, then you can't invalidate someone's feelings. You just have to listen and try and understand where they're coming from.
It's approaching it humbly, in a way that you are ready to learn something.
Absolutely.
And what would you say to someone listening to this who was aspiring to go into medicine and was perhaps worried about some of these unconscious assumptions that might be made about them?
Changes are happening. They may not come quickly, but they are happening. Never be put off by assumptions people make about you. and that the only competition you're in is with yourself. And if you believe you can do it, you will do it.
And why is it important? My final question. Why? And then you can sleep. Why is it important that places like the NHS reflect the makeup of society as a whole?
Because of exactly that. The NHS is a reflection of our society, and it's the only place in the country where you will be treated regardless of any background you have. We don't turn people away. And I think that's so important. So when you hear stories of people judging others within the NHS, you're hearing people not respect the vows that they took to look after patients, to treat colleagues with respect. And I think that's why it hurts the most. I think that's why we need to really stomp it out.
How do you think that people can become more aware of these unconscious biases that they hold?
My biggest tip is always to diversify your friendship group. That's where everything should start. If you have friends from different backgrounds, be that class, be that country, be that sexual orientation, like whatever, religion, that will really help you understand how the world works, because these are your friends, these are people you spend time with. So that's my top tip. But then the way that we're going to make sure that the culture is really there is through organisations. And unfortunately, a lot of teams have a lot of hiring to do to make up, a more diverse kind of staffing. But it doesn't mean that they can't start already with just like cultural things. So making sure you get speakers in for different events, and not also putting the onus on the only people of colour in the company, making sure that it becomes a collective and it's not just this person is the only, black person in the company, so they need to be in charge of everything to do with diversity, be that whatever. I find it really funny, if you're from a minority group, you kind of get pigeonholed into owning all like celebrations and knowledge around all diversity groups.
Really?
So it's kind of like, we need to just make sure that everyone is clued up and feels like they can be part of the conversation.
Do you think social media can, I suppose, challenge people's unconscious bias?
If we are constantly faced with different types of people, it becomes normal for us to see different types of people. So having, different families on I don't know if people still watch Emmerdale, but like Emmerdale and EastEnders and Coronation Street, and having in between those shows, having like adverts that are diverse in all senses of the word, not just having, one like mixed race girl on there. It's like full spectrum of what diversity means in terms of ethnicity. And I think it normalizes what we see. And that's the same with people from the LGBTQ community, showing that, there's no difference. We're all people. And I think it's really important that we just showcase that, because there are so many biases, stigmas, and cultural blocks that stop us from understanding that who we're talking about are actually people, humans. There's no difference here.
Charlotte, it's been really interesting chatting to you, and I just wish you and 7 Six all the best. It sounds like you're doing a great job in that sphere.
Thank you so much.